Lewis Hamilton has just called it what no fan wanted to hear: his worst first season with any team in his entire Formula One career. After a chaotic Grand Prix in Brazil, front wing destroyed, a 5-second penalty, and another DNF, the 7-time world champion walked away not just without points, but without answers. Ferrari, once within striking distance of second in the constructors, now trails Red Bull and Mercedes by over 30 points. And Hamilton, the man brought in to lead a new era, is being left to fight without the tools to win. What's really happening inside Ferrari? And how did one of the greatest drivers of all time get caught in the middle of this nightmare season? Let's break it all down. From the moment the lights went out in Brazil, everything pointed toward a difficult afternoon for Lewis Hamilton. His launch was cautious but calculated, clearly aiming to avoid the midfield chaos. But before the first lap could even establish rhythm, Hamilton's front wing was ripped apart in a collision with Franco Colapinto. The damage didn't just end his pace, it ended his race. It was one of those moments where even the most experienced hands are left wondering, what more could I have done? The Brazilian Grand Prix wasn't just another DNF for Hamilton. It marked the culmination of a season riddled with underperformance, strategic missteps, and a Ferrari SF25 that simply doesn't understand the man driving it. He returned to the pits, visibly defeated. Not angry, not explosive, but deflated. And when asked post-race if this was his worst year in Formula One, he didn't hesitate. Yes, absolutely. Mentally, it's been exhausting. That kind of honesty from a 7-time world champion sends a powerful message. Ferrari isn't just behind on pace, it's behind on direction. After the contact, Ferrari's pit wall delayed the call for a new wing. Hamilton was forced to nurse the car through multiple corners with catastrophic understeer, losing precious time and tire temperature. Once the stop finally came, they compounded the issue by failing to pivot his race strategy. Even with clean air and a fresh set of mediums, the car offered no stability. The balance was unpredictable, the rear twitchy under load, and the front refused to bite when it mattered. The result? A car unfit to fight and a legend unable to lead. This is not the Hamilton we've come to know. This is a driver still fighting at the peak of his mental game, asking the right questions, pushing for answers, and executing with surgical precision, but without the machinery to convert it into results. Ferrari brought him in to be the final piece of their championship puzzle. Instead, he's become the mirror reflecting everything still broken within Maranello's structure. The car is inconsistent. The strategy team lacks adaptability. And worst of all, the communication between driver and pit wall continues to break down when it matters most. Meanwhile, in the constructor standings, the damage is mounting. Red Bull is untouchable up front, but the real fight lies just behind. Mercedes has extended its advantage over Ferrari to 34 points. A gap that didn't exist just a few races ago. And that figure doesn't just hurt on paper, it affects budget allocations, testing time, and long-term development priorities. Ferrari, with all its resources and the greatest driver of a generation in its garage, is currently under-delivering in every measurable way. What happened in Brazil wasn't just a racing incident. It was the full exposure of Ferrari's most critical weakness, the inability to evolve in real time. And for Lewis Hamilton, it's starting to look like a battle he didn't sign up for. A season that promised a renaissance is now forcing him to fight ghosts from within. This is no longer just about setup or strategy. It's about a driver trying to pull an empire forward while it continues to stall behind him. Lewis Hamilton did not join Ferrari to finish races in the garage. He didn't leave Mercedes, a team built around him, to become collateral damage in a car unable to defend or attack. But in Brazil, it became brutally clear Ferrari's problems are not just mechanical. They are systemic. From the cockpit to the pit wall, a failure in clarity, in coordination, and in conviction has slowly dismantled what was meant to be a championship-caliber partnership. The first signs appeared months ago, in small inconsistencies. A poorly timed undercut here, a miscalculated tire call there. But in Interlagos, everything unraveled at once. Hamilton's collision with Colapinto was unfortunate, but not terminal. What was terminal, however, was Ferrari's delayed reaction. They hesitated on calling the box. They fumbled on adjusting strategy. And in a sport where milliseconds decide fate, that hesitation turned a damaged car into a DNF. The 5-second penalty handed to Hamilton for rejoining dangerously only added insult to injury. Many in the paddock questioned it. Some even labeled it harsh. But what stood out most was Hamilton's reaction, or rather, the lack of it. He took the penalty in silence, said little to the media, and left with the weight of the entire project on his shoulders. This isn't frustration anymore. It's disillusionment. The kind that creeps in when a driver gives everything, and the team gives confusion in return. This brings us to the cold numbers. Ferrari is now 34 points behind Mercedes in constructor standings. 3 races remain. On current form, that gap will only widen. Every race where Hamilton fails to finish, every moment where the car underdelivers, isn't just a missed opportunity. It's a message to every engineer and strategist in Maranello that this team is still not ready to match the standard of the modern championship era. And yet, the driver at the center of it all refuses to point fingers. Lewis continues to lead from the front in press conferences, in briefings in the paddock. He knows what it takes to build a title-winning team. But even his patience has limits. When the tools you're handed can't execute your vision, doubt doesn't just enter the room, it takes the seat next to you, in the cockpit. This is no longer about Brazil. This is about what Ferrari is and what it is failing to become. And as the final 3 races approach, the question is no longer, can Hamilton win? It's now, can Ferrari give him a car worth fighting with? The SF25 was not supposed to be this unpredictable. When Lewis Hamilton signed with Ferrari, early data suggested a car with potential. A strong low-speed balance, good tire degradation, and a revised aero concept to compete with Red Bull's efficient platform. But as the season evolved, so did the contradictions. The car works in simulations. It works in controlled wind tunnel testing. But once it hits the real track, particularly under race pressure, it reveals a deeply flawed identity. In Brazil, the instability was obvious. Front-end grip vanished mid-corner. Rear-end traction was inconsistent on throttle exit. And in traffic, the SF25 behaved more like a midfield machine than a front-runner. For a driver like Hamilton who thrives on precision, rhythm, and high-speed commitment, this kind of inconsistency is career poison. He cannot lean on the car. He cannot trust the feedback. And worst of all, he cannot predict its behavior lap to lap, which is critical in tire and brake management. Ferrari's latest updates, including new barge board geometries and diffuser refinements, were meant to address aero stalling in yaw, especially in circuits with elevation and direction changes like Interlagos. But the team failed to validate these updates under real race pressure. What they gained in corner entry sharpness, they lost in rear stability. That's what compromised Hamilton during his recovery after the front wing change. Despite having a clean track ahead, he couldn't push. The car would bite unexpectedly. The balance was skewed, and when it came time to fight back, he simply didn't have the mechanical confidence to risk aggressive overtakes. Then came the data contradiction. Hamilton's telemetry showed the car was down on aero load after the wing replacement, but Ferrari's system flagged no irregularities. That mismatch sparked internal debate inside the garage. Was it a sensor glitch, a misaligned install, or simply a car that doesn't tolerate mid-race repairs? Either way, Hamilton was forced to manage a compromised setup while trying to salvage points, a battle even the greatest cannot win when the platform underneath them is unstable by design. And that's where engineering and psychology collide. Lewis doesn't need the fastest car. He's proven he can outdrive his machinery. But he needs consistency. He needs feedback he can trust. In Brazil, he got the opposite. Every lap was an exercise in adaptation. Every corner was a risk. For a driver who builds his rhythm across sectors, this kind of random behavior is not just frustrating, it's race-ruining. It's mentally draining in a way that no simulator or practice session can prepare you for. This isn't just about one Grand Prix. It's a reflection of Ferrari's deeper issue, a disconnect between what their engineers believe the car is and what their lead driver is experiencing at 300 kilometers per hour. Until that gap closes, no wind tunnel breakthrough or strategy overhaul will matter. Strategy is often the invisible weapon of Formula One. When executed perfectly, it wins races without overtakes. But when it collapses as it did for Ferrari in Brazil, it leaves even a 7-time world champion exposed and helpless. For Lewis Hamilton, what started as a manageable setback became an irrecoverable disaster because the Ferrari pit wall hesitated at the precise moment it needed to act with conviction. The front wing damage after contact with Colapinto was a turning point, but it wasn't terminal. Hamilton had enough pace to continue, enough awareness to manage the situation. What he lacked was direction. The Ferrari engineers took nearly 2 laps to make the call to pit. In that window, Hamilton was losing over 2 seconds per lap. He was vocally requesting a change, sensing that performance was falling off rapidly. But the response was silence, followed by indecision. That delay cost him track position, rhythm, and ultimately, relevance in the race. Then came the penalty 5 seconds for an unsafe rejoin. Whether harsh or fair, it further illustrated a breakdown in communication. Hamilton wasn't guided through the re-entry line with urgency. There was no immediate feedback, no active race management. The kind of situational awareness that Mercedes excelled at for years is still inconsistent at Ferrari. That difference, invisible to most viewers, defines whether a car finishes 8th or fails to finish at all. But the damage wasn't just numeric. It was psychological. Hamilton, who has built his career on trust between cockpit and pit wall, found himself stranded. The tone on team radio shifted. His messages became shorter. His feedback more neutral. That's not detachment, that's disappointment. When the driver knows he's fighting alone, the instinct isn't to push harder. It's to protect what's left. And that's what he did: protect the car, bring it back safely, until the race fell out of reach, and the team chose retirement over further risk.